Hello there, and welcome back to Orlando Timelapse series. In today's episode, we will finally start with the actual main street itself, specifically with the Emporium Building. So as I mentioned in the last episode, I was pretty pressured when starting here. It's not so much about the actual process of building it, but whatever proportion and scale we set here, it will have a direct impact and consequence on pretty much the whole main street itself. And so therefore I took much more caution here than I would normally do to properly lay out and position this building in the exact location it needs to be. So from this episode onwards, you will see me from time to time using this huge billboard under the ground. It took me quite a while to properly make that. It's quite a complicated and tedious process. You not only have to think now about those billboards, how they work in the game itself, but much more about how you get 10 meters, for example, into this game that you have also here 10 meters. And so I was a little bit afraid of this process and kept it away all the time, but I think it's just very mandatory and it would be very stupid if we not would have this safety measure in place. When we strictly following this logic of this image, then we just can't do anything wrong. We will have here a very accurate rendition of it. And that's the thing I'm caring about. And so when I added now those billboards in the game, I was very relieved to see that everything that I built prior to that fitted relatively good to this billboard. There were of course some spots, for example the main hub, where the curvature of that is not perfectly on point. But overall, all those buildings are relatively within the spot they have to be. And that's the important part here. And so even if the actual size of this billboard or the dimensions within that are a little bit off, so between 50 centimeters to 1 meter, it shouldn't really matter that much, simply because you have here one coherent image of the park. Everything you see there has a set location, and if we are strictly following that logic, we should have here all the right relationships or distances between every building that you see there. And so the only axis or dimension you could say that we aren't really sure about is the one that you don't see on this image, and that is the height of it. But I mean, therefore we have reference images of the park, right? Depending on how a building looks like, for example here the Emporium Building, I can guess the right scale and proportion of it much easier if two axes or two dimensions are already set by the billboard itself. Having said that, the image that you see on those billboards is of course very grainy or very pixelated, although it's a very high resolution image, but it's only as a guideline for where to position now those buildings. When it comes down to the actual construction of the building itself, I usually stick to the old-fashioned way of guessing it. It's a constant process where you look thousands of times on this reference image to check the right proportion, the overall scale, and all those different elements that you see there. So in that way, it's very similar to the classic form of drawing buildings, landscapes, and all those different things very realistically, where you also over time develop a certain eyesight to judge there the right proportion, the right scale, the right color, how near and how far something is, and how the lighting is affecting it. All of those things you have to consider when you are doing a classic drawing. And so it's no wonder to me why it's so similar to what we are doing right now. But the big difference between classic drawing and creating something in a video game is that we always have here a 3D space that is predefined. In a drawing, we would always have to think about the right perspective. Where are those vanishing points that are needed for a perspective to work? So in our case, we don't have to be bothered about that. But still, the same rule set of realism applies more or less also here. And whenever we are creating something, we have to follow them. But maybe let me explain how I approached now this building in particular. After I was satisfied with the positioning, I started on the actual logic behind it. The most prominent part of this building is the colonnade on it. In that regard, it's very similar to the theater that we built a couple of episodes before, where also the colonnade defines pretty much the whole facade of it. But the extra difficulty, I would say here, is that you now have a corner where those two colonnades collide into. So there's an octagonal shape right at the very corner of this building that not only defines now this column logic, but pretty much the overall look and appearance of this very iconic building. I mean, after all, it's the Emporium Building, and at least back in Anaheim, this very building was probably the most important or iconic one within the main street itself. But I mean, it's always a question how far stretched or how far you define now the actual main street. Is it only the street itself, or is it also the area around it? And in a way, they all blend into each other. So you can't really define now a clear cut between those areas, I think. But back to the build. As you see, I defined now the actual proportion of the colonnade itself, but also the space between those colonnades. Once I had that, I started on the actual construction of it. And since we have the ability now to scale every art piece down to 5%, I made, of course, use out of that. But I mean, still, I can't fully comprehend how groundbreaking this little change will be in the future. Every little detail we have to create gets impacted by that. So it not only became much easier now to create those small details, but the simple fact that they look the same, so there's a visual coherence within them, that's what makes them so great. You can combine them to create more complex shapes, and it will look like they were precasted as this one shape. And that's of course something I, as a creator that has a very realistic approach to those things, wants. So there's a specific intention how I want something to look like. For example, I don't want people to think now about this column here, oh, he used there a specific art piece just at this very spot to make this construction look like a column. What I want here is that the result that you see later on makes sense and that everything that you see there blends into each other. So this column should not only look like a column, but it should make the illusion that it is a column. And that's the trick that we have to fulfill, and I believe, at least in my opinion, that you can do that much better now, since you can scale down those art pieces to 5%. So as I constructed this building, I noticed that the wall material, we have here again brickwork happening. And so currently, right now in the game, with the Western update, we got another wall set that covers a different style of brickwork. The pattern on it, it's a little bit more alternating, and you have there some bricks that are brighter and some bricks that are more darker, and you can recolor them. And I mean, it's great to have there a little bit more variation, that not every brick building that you are building has the same texture on it. So right here on the Emporium Building, I had to make a choice which brickwork wall set I would use now. And so at least for now, as the build goes on, I stick to both of them. Much later in this episode, you will see me that I switch back to the original Planet Coaster 2 brickwork for those columns there, because I just find that within one building that you only have there one type of brickwork. It looks much more cleanly, I think, that you don't have there two different textures colliding into each other. And so something that was quite important to me was that the brickwork that you are seeing has the same scaling like in reality. In reality, Everywhere you see brickwork, it follows a specific logic. There are so many different ways how you can place them down. And you can play with those patterns very creatively also. But whenever you use it, you have to be very intentional about it. And you have to find solutions whenever you have an opening happening, like a doorway or a window. How does this pattern react now to those situations? I mean, within our game here, we really don't have to bother about that too much. But I think it's important that we think about the right sizing of it. When you use this brickwork here in the game, you normally have 100% scaling of it. And at this stage, the brickwork is way too big. When you see it right beside a person here, it will just look very awkward. And therefore, whenever I'm using brickwork in this game, I scale it down to 50%. And that's roughly the right sizing, I think. And you can even count the layers of it. When you have there 12 layers of brickwork, it will give you exactly 1 meter. And you know, those small details, they are just very helpful for us. That we using those real-world design strategies for our advantage. I think in a previous episode I also talked about that, where I have here a couple of architecture books that I constantly go through so that I know their specific things, how they are built also in reality. I think it makes sense to be aware of that, since it's there for a specific purpose, and that is to give those guidelines to pretty much every person that builds now a specific building, how those things are constructed. And I mean, what better inspiration you can have than to learn those things from reality? And that's kind of the thing, right? Whenever you are creating maybe a coaster on your own, I would also recommend exactly that. Study just real-world examples, how they are created. This will give you the best source of inspiration. Every coaster that exists in the real world has to follow certain guidelines on how they are constructed. And they are facing constantly so many issues where they have to fight against all of the limitations that keep our physical world in place, so to say. And so those limitations, of course, don't exist in this game, for example. In this game, you can, of course, build certain coasters. For example, a coaster that boosts you up to like light speed, that just would not work in reality. Maybe that's also a good thing that it's not like that. But when you follow this logic, I think it makes perfectly sense that you think those real-world limitations right here into the game. Every coaster, every building, every scenery piece that you see here, think of it like it would exist in reality. Depending on its material and its density, it has a different weight. So pretty much anything that you see here has to be supported in some way. Otherwise, the gravitational forces of Planet Coaster would bring it to the ground. I mean, we both know that it's of course not like that actually in Planet Coaster. I mean, you can build very fantastical creations, but if you want to stay very accurate and realistic in your build, then I think it's very vital to think like that. You have to think realistic before you start building realistic. I think that's the one thing to consider whenever you are doing a realistic build within one video game. So maybe at this stage, let's come back to the build itself. As you see, I created now this set of windows at the ground floor, and I tried to keep the profile of it relatively thinly so that I have space behind that to create a fake interior. After all, it's one of the most important gift shops of the whole park, and so therefore I think it's reasonable to show that also in the facade of it. While I'm saying that, there is of course the question that comes up, how we deal with gift shops throughout this park, right? Especially knowing that Frontier have announced that they will bring gift shops as a feature within the 6th update in June. I mean, are we creating now the whole interior in every gift shop there is on the main street? Or maybe only on very specific ones, for example here on the Emporium Building? And then you can play this game, of course, also with restaurants or just with right interior throughout. But at least for me, myself, it makes sense to stick now to exterior only. And all those interior spaces, we can always come back to them and add them later on. Having said that, the more I think about this, the more I like this idea that I outsource those interior spaces maybe to the community, to you as you are just watching maybe. If you want that, then you could actively help in creating this park. I mean, I want to stay pretty independent in this park, but clearly, if I also now have to do all the interiors here, then we will be finished here in 2050. I mean, takes so much more time if I also do now the interior. I do it maybe for very significant buildings, like the railroad station, or here this Emporium Building, but for the overall majority of those buildings here, I can very well imagine that this would be a cool thing, that you might create an interior of a specific building, and then you could also credit yourself within this building. So all the time people are going in the guest perspective, they see your name there, maybe on the counter of it, or you make a special Easter egg. And that way you can give there your own flavor to this park. And it depicts also here that we are not alone within this park. We are a coherent community that sticks together, and I think this would be a wonderful integration of that. However, I'm still a little bit unsure how we actually do it now, since I have this integration of the membership where people can have early access to this park, and I of course don't want to make the impression here that you have to pay now to be actually part of this park. But maybe I can give here two ways how we can deal with that. The first thing would be, of course, if you are a member, then you could already work on that and you could select now a specific building you like to work on. And the other thing, after I finish the main street, I will make this section of the park public. And then you can, of course, also come to me, say, okay, I like to work on this specific building here. I want to provide an interior space for it. And you might can do that then. Having said that, right now it's much easier, I think, not only for me, but also for you, that we just stick to the collaboration that comes with your membership. In that way, I can keep track of all the people that are working in this park. And it also allows us, in this case on Discord, to exchange ourselves, how we build those interior spaces. So once you are happy with what you have created there, you just update this collaboration. And at some point I will take all of those things and add them to the live build. But in that manner, I think it's very refreshing also for this time-lapse series. I mean, right now you see me primarily building on this theme park the whole time, and you see only me reacting to my own stuff. And from there on, I would from time to time showcase the stuff that you build and the community. And so you see there a different side, how I think about those things and how my reaction of that is. But having said all of those things here, let me be very clear here that it's not written in stone, and I might change my perspective on this whole thing in the future. Nothing will change in the approach of me recreating this theme park. It's only about those very secondary interior spaces that would just hold me up right now. And therefore I want to give this opportunity here that if you are really interested into it and serious about it, then you can be part of the creation of this park. So for any more details on that, join our Discord server. But so far I think this will conclude this topic, and let's come back to the build. So as you see, I'm working right now on this ornamental trim area on top of this colonnade. In reality, you have here those ornaments that look like a 4-leaf clover. In the game I did not really find any piece for that, except maybe this metal flower that you just see here. But I'm not 100% happy with the appearance, how it looks now. Not only you have here this glossy metal effect that kinda conflicts with those art pieces and those other pieces, but In reality, this little ornament is of course very thinly and you can look through it. So at least right now in the game, if you want to create that, you really have to try so hard, even to the point where it's impossible. And I just feel it shouldn't be so hard, right? It could be so much more easier if we would have here another set of art pieces that would cover more complex shapes, like a tube, for example, or different ways how you can create an arc. I mean, with the current set of art pieces, you can already create so much, especially with the ability that you can scale them up and down, and even to 5%. But just imagine if you now have much more art pieces in different forms and in more complex shapes. The possibilities of what you can create out of them will increase tremendously, even to the point where you don't really need to build now something out of scenery pieces at all. I could very well imagine building this main street solely out of art pieces. The result of it would of course not look 100% great, but alone the fact that you could do that makes this point, right? The more variations you have on those art pieces, the less you have to use scenery pieces for that. And if that is the case, then it should be in the interest of the game's developer. You don't have to make now this extra effort of creating thematic scenery packs. You just make the broadband of generic pieces so big that you can build any thematic area out of them. I mean, most 3D software out there comes already with those very basic and also more complex shapes by default. But let me also say this, those art shapes can of course replace now those thematic scenery packs. There is still a reason why we have them and why we need them. At certain instances, they go beyond any art piece could get. It wouldn't make sense to create now a barrel or a crate or a flag out of art pieces, just because those pre-made ones will look just way better. And why they look better? Since they are a 3D model by itself that covers a complex geometry and texture. So after all, I think you can say, for us as a creator, it's the best if we have both options here. But if I would have to choose one of them, I would pick art pieces every time. They just give you the great flexibility to create any theme within a theme park. And at least in my opinion, those pieces should be your bread and butter. And that's why you should have way more variations of them. But let's come back to the build. As you see, I copied over the facade also on this side, and I'm very excited to tell you that this is the first facade on the actual main street itself. When you take a look on how this building is layouted or which shape is it about, it's actually a cube. Both sides of it have exactly the same length attached to it, only the height is different here. And that's also the main reason why I started with this Emporium building. It makes everything easier since it's a cube and you can judge the right proportion then much easier from then on. And so right here, something happened again to the recording. I'm so sorry. I actually forgot now to press the recording button. But it's really not that much. And the only thing that you missed here is the creation of those two different variations of this trim area. One with 6 boxes and one with 8 boxes. And then I just rotated them onto this corner. But aside from that, you did not miss anything here. And so far as I created this building, I thought, everything looks fine and I don't have here any issues. But just in this very moment, I move now this little trim area to the side, since I thought, well, it doesn't really match up now and I have to compensate for that inaccuracy. But much later on, and also right now, I noticed of course it's absolutely bullshit. It will of course match to those 8 boxes that you see in the very midpoint of this building. I just have to move everything on the right side much nearer to the left, and then since it's a cube, it works at some point. But sometimes, sometimes your own thinking is limiting what you want to create, or you already have a presumption of something that you not really thought through. And in this case, I couldn't see that it was actually possible, because I was thinking about so much different things at the time. But after I got back into building the next day, I figured out this solution very quickly. So sometimes I think it's very great that you're inserting their intentional breaks to keep your mind always fresh. I mean, it's a little bit what I said in the last episode, that you don't want to overload yourself and suddenly you don't want to continue within this game. I mean, at least for me, this would be the worst thing that would happen, right? And that's really why you sometimes just have to stop, even if you want to continue. I mean, right now as I'm recording this episode, I started and ended so many times here while recording. This episode might sound to you like it is recorded in one go, but it's certainly not. And I mean, sometimes you can hear it when my voice changes a lot, from maybe a very dark voice to a very high voice, depending on the time of the day, most certainly. But I think it's vital that you have every time a fresh start, because you can very quickly become brain dead. Or sometimes you just don't find the right words and you completely freeze at a certain point in time. And when you wake up the next day, you completely don't get it, why you struggled there so hard. It's just as easy as taking a walk. And it's of course not only happening now in Planet Coaster. I mean, throughout your whole day, I at least have multiple situations like that every day. And I just cannot do stuff for 8 or 10 or 12 hours on end. And so I believe it's not only now the physical or mental disability that you just at a certain point shut off and go into this standby mode. I just believe that your brain, your very own biological organ there, needs the time to understand all those things. So if you have watched the previous episode about ragtime, you probably know that I'm very much about music. I play music since I was 6 years old, and so it was always there in my life, and I couldn't count the times I prepared or learned a new piece on piano where exactly this strategy worked very good. I would only learn there for 1 or 2 hours. Then I would do a break. Maybe in the afternoon I would do the same then, but roughly that's it. And then maybe on the second day I completely do nothing about that. And then I would repeat this cycle on the third day. And in that manner, I always found, or at least it felt to me, that I make the most process or the most progression out of it by spending the least amount of time of actually doing it, but let the brain do the work for me. I think that's something that sounds so weird, because you would always assume the more is better, right? And who is thinking about himself as a artificial processor, right? If we follow this logic, then my CPU, so my brain, at a certain point in time, it cannot upkeep all those processes going on around me. And at a certain point in time, I just give you the blue screen of death, so to say. And that's kinda relieving of knowing. I know of so many people in my life who worked their ass off. They really tried hard. And where I believe even if they try so hard, they just cannot make it. Not because they can't do it theoretically on their own, but their physical and biological organ just can't keep up. It gets overloaded because there's no pacing within that. There's no workload that is outsourced to different times on the day. So in a way you could call that a term that I really do not like very much, work-life balance. And I mainly dislike this term because there's a separation between work and life. Normally, you want to combine those two things, and you do not want to divide them now into two separate housings of your life. Every time you are working, that's also your life. And the thing that is meant within this term is, of course, the time you spend off work. So I would call it much more work time and off work time. But apart from this terminology, I think it's vital that you find there a nice mix between the time that you are working on something and the time you are not working on something. But our brain, does it really make now the difference between that? I don't think so. Our brain is constantly going through all those processes. You can't really turn it off. Are you even controlling it right now? I mean, when you think of something very directly, you have this impression of it. But is it actually like that? Or is your brain actually doing something behind the curtain? I mean, there's so much that we just cannot see that is working under the surface, this subconsciousness that we just don't know what really happens there. I mean, every time you sleep, alone this process by itself is so very hideous, and you just don't know what is going on there. I mean, are you dreaming there something that you really decided to dream there? Or is it something that your brain wants you to dream? And so we get here really in some territory that is very cloudy, and I mean, everybody has here an own opinion probably, but what is reality? If I can imagine that I just in this very moment think about myself and my existence, then this simple fact of knowing that gives me enough confidence that I'm existing right now in reality. But I mean, what is reality actually about? Is there only one reality, or are there multiple ones? I mean, you, as you're just listening and watching, you probably live in a complete different reality, although in the very same at the same time like mine. But we are just so very much apart in spatial relationship that we don't really know of each other, that we are even existing. I mean, in this very moment, you know that I'm existing by watching this episode, but I literally don't have any clue who you are and if you are even existing. I mean, I just can't make up my mind and guess whoever is watching here. I mean, if you comment now, I probably find out about it, but other than that, I will never know. And so however I perceive now my everyday life, that's for me the reality I'm living in. And all the time I go to sleep mode. Well, I don't know what's going around me, and when I wake up, then this is for me the reality. And so in the whole time of this sleeping mode, for me this reality is in some way not even existing. I mean, it's this weird semi-mode where you are completely in a different dimension. And to think now that at the very same moment, all of those different things in the complete universe are going around you is just mind-blowing to me. But most certainly everybody has also here a different opinion. But one thing that you can be pretty sure of is the fact in whatever reality you are living now, that the time is always moving onwards. I mean, there is literally no pausing of it or any stoppage of it. But also, whenever you sleep now, I think you lose there the sense of time. I mean, I have never seen anybody count the time he really took now when he was sleeping. I mean, sure, you can say I sleep now for 2 or 3 hours, but in the process of sleeping, are you actually thinking now, oh, I have to wake up in 1 minute? And so if you think for a second about time, surely there had to be some moment in time where the clock started, or there had to be something happening where this reality started. Otherwise, why does it constantly goes on and on and on? And pretty much everything we see in this world, we know that everything has some kind of limitations. There is almost nothing that is endless. I mean, even the universe, there has to be some limitation there that keeps everything in place because there was a starting point. And when there is something that is endless, I think you just don't have any starting point or end point. Because how can something start that exists all the time? And so, at least in my understanding, everything that you encounter in your everyday life, it's not endless. There is a specific time in space that defines it. You cannot be at two different places at the very same time. So in whatever reality you are living in, you are bound to space and time. And at least in my opinion, there's only one reality that we constantly sharing between us. Between every living creature there is. It's just a matter when they were existing at a given time in space. And so as I'm saying this, it even more surprises me that we have so much luck here to live just at this very moment in this world. I mean, there were many different times where it would be, let's say, inconvenient to be living in this world. Just go back 100 years from now, or 200, or 500, or even 1000. On one hand, I would of course be very curious how our life would be within that time period, but just imagine on all those terrible ways you could die on. This gruesomeness, this violence, and this hatred. And it's not only produced by the humankind in particular, it's, I think, much more the true harsh reality of nature. I think nothing can be so cruel than just the nature by itself. I think there is no such thing as mercy or remorse or heroism or good or bad. There's just nature, and that's all about it. It won't make a difference if you're now a very good person and you really like animals of some sort and you go out and want to cuddle a wild bear. Guess what? This bear will attack you and maybe even kill you and probably even eat you after it, but it's just the thing I'm trying to get around here. It's of course no Disney-esque world that we are living. It's the harsh reality of nature. It doesn't make any decision about your ideals or what you did before and after it. It's just there, and that's the thing I find so fascinating about this. There is really no purpose of it, and all the time we as a human being, most certainly we have for everything in life a specific purpose. And animals, for example, they don't, I think. They only have instincts that forces them to behave in a certain way. I don't think that they really think like us. I mean, it depends also on the animal itself, but I just think that there is no such animal, except maybe an octopus, that really has a degree of self-reflection within them, so that they can say something like, oh, I'm existing right now at this very moment. So they are only about their most primal instincts. Oh, I have hunger, I need food. Oh, there's an enemy, I have to retreat now. And on one hand, I find it very sad that it's like that. Whenever I look on my cats here, at least for me, they are much more than a cat. They are our own soul within them that has almost a certain character. It's a good friend, and there's a specific emotional relationship to this animal. But at the same time, just imagine if this cat would have now the same cognitive abilities like we as human beings. I mean, this cat would probably completely insult me at some point and ask me why it has always to be within this very home. Then I would of course reply in saying, you have to be here in order to stay safe. The world out there is just too cruel. But just imagine being that cat. You've been told that you can't live your life and discover this world just for the sake of being safe. Even if I would be very excited for that cat, how it would be to be one of us, I'm very grateful that it's like that and that they really do not think too much about their own existence. And so the more I think about this, the more I can see this fascination why you would want to make a real-life animal your best friend and to transfer it now into those comics and sketches of Disney and to make a whole story about those animals. I mean, when you take a look on all those original cartoons there, in almost every one of them, you have animals being the star of it. I mean, just think about Mickey Mouse and Dumbo and The Lion King and Bambi. In all those movies and cartoons, the story is told through those animals. You don't see there almost any real people in it. And I really thought long and hard on why that's the thing. And so I believe it's that animals in general are a lot more relatable than other people. When you see somebody on the street, maybe you say hi, but after all that's it. But instead, if you now see a cat there, then you go there and say, oh, what's your name? Oh, you are so cute. And you give it a stroke and a hug. And you already have there a lot different relationship happening. Although you probably never seen this cat. So you are reacting and acting different than to other human beings. If I would have there now people within this story, then they would appear to you much more different than animals. But since they are animals, they don't judge you, they don't think bad of you. No matter who you are and how you look, they will behave in the same way like to every other person there is. And that's of course the quality if you use an animal as a character within a cartoon. You don't have this false impression that is of course very indirect, but it's still there. Maybe the character looks like the husband of a woman, and therefore she hates this character because he looks like it. That's of course something that we can't really avoid as a storyteller, and where we can't really think about each personality who might has a problem with this character now. But if we switch the medium from a person to an animal, then we can perfectly avoid that and we can focus on the true storytelling part of it. The audience will be a lot more open to what we have to tell here. And this perfectly makes sense also to children. Those characters will not look like their own parents, who might forbid them to eat more ice cream or something like that. And so they find, of course, their perfect body within this character. I mean, for example, think about Winnie Pooh here. But at least that's my overall explanation why you see so many animal creatures within those cartoons. It not only makes the story a lot more appealing throughout all ages, but it puts the story into the center of attention by removing any bad preassumptions you may have about a human being. That's, I think, what makes it so special after all, and why you also can't forget those stories. So with that being said, this will conclude today's episode. I think we made today an enormous start on the actual Main Street itself, and from here on the continuation will be a lot easier, just because we have here now a point of reference we always can relate to. And so as always, if you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, like or comment, become a member of this channel, join our Discord server, watch my other videos about Anaheim or Orlando, and thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.